Welcome into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we're going to be breaking down the recent rumors that the Golden State Warriors are reportedly interested in acquiring Heat star Jimmy Butler. Now, the Warriors have sort of been in a handful of different rumors throughout the course of this offseason. They are very clearly in a point where they need to make a move, especially coming off of this past year's Olympics, where Steph Curry in those last two games showed that he is able to step up in the biggest moments, in the biggest games, if he is actually there. Unfortunately for the Warriors, they were unable to make the playoffs last year. Ended up losing in the play-in tournament and had to sit out the entire dance. So the rumors of this potential deal of the Warriors inquiring about Jimmy Butler occurred when Sam Amick of The Athletic went on the TK show and said that the Warriors have interest in Butler and, quote, probably made a couple calls to the Heat in the offseason. And that doesn't sound exactly like scorching hot, definitive. The Warriors are pursuing Jimmy Butler, but it's the NBA offseason. It's all rumor based. And either way, the Heat are at a point where they're not going to trade Jimmy Butler this offseason. That was never really on the table. But that being said, the Heat are coming off of a second straight season of being a play-in tournament team. I know they went to the finals in 2023, so you can throw that back at me. I hear you. I understand what they did in the playoffs. But the Heat also aren't trying to, make the path more difficult for themselves on a regular basis. It's not a real form of sustainable success right there. And it's not just that. I mean, they looked like a middling team during the regular season of each of the past two seasons. Yeah, Jimmy Butler got red hot in the playoffs. They also sort of benefited from some injuries to the Bucks in that first series, especially with Giannis. But again, hypotheticals there. We don't really do that on this show. So the Heat made the finals in 2023. That's excellent. But for the majority of the past 2 years, the Heat have looked like a very mediocre team. And obviously, playoff Jimmy and this idea that they can just flip the switch in the playoffs and everything is magically fixed. I mean, it is definitely true that they are of that caliber. And, specifically Jimmy Butler has the experience where he can sort of take his game to another level when the playoffs arise. But we also saw him last year end up getting hurt because they weren't good enough in the regular season and they had to play a play-in tournament game. In that extra game, he ends up getting hurt. Now, Pat Riley himself has sort of addressed this to some degrees that Jimmy Butler needs to play more games for the Heat. And the Heat have, across the board, been dealing with injuries these past couple seasons. If you look back to this past season, or even in 2023 as well, I mean, Tyler Hero has missed a very significant amount of time last year. Jimmy Butler's missed at least 15 games in each of the last 5 seasons. So that obviously hasn't been exactly a reliable form for them. They end up trading for Terry Rozier at the trade deadline last year, which was a move that I definitely liked. But as soon as he started finding his rhythm, he ends up missing the rest of the season with a neck injury and never returns for the playoffs there either. So, you can make excuses for the Heat in terms of an injury standpoint, and I hear that. But that being said, at the end of the day, results are the results. The Heat would like to be better in the regular season, and I think that I would hope every Heat fan would agree with that they're not trying to go out and sort of one-seed hunt in the first round of every year. But like I mentioned, Warriors missed the playoffs last year. Curry showed that he's one of the best players in the NBA, but they've just sort of been treading water a little bit these past couple years. Now, they made the second round of the playoffs in 2023 themselves before falling to the Lakers, So it's not like they've been entirely incompetent by any means, but it does feel like they're stuck in this middle ground a little bit where it's Steph Curry and it's drop off everybody else on the roster, which includes Klay Thompson, who they saw depart in this past offseason. Draymond Green, when he's been on the court, has been impactful for them, but also he gets himself suspended for a lengthy time last year because of the whole Gobert situation. So, Draymond's your second most reliable player in this situation, and he doesn't even give you a ton from an offensive creation standpoint. Obviously, I know everything that he does off the ball and as a screener for Curry to elevate his game, so I'm not by any means, disparaging the importance of Draymond Green, but they haven't really had those other go-to guys. Now, they have all of these young pieces that do make things really interesting. Brandon Podziemski had an excellent rookie season. Trace Jackson-Davis as well with his rookie season ended up being a huge steal for them. You look at Jonathan Kuminga, who took significant steps forward this past year. And you can talk yourself into, they have options, but they don't really have a co-star for Curry to run with throughout a deep playoff run at this current moment. And that is where you start to look towards what a second star could be for them. And in the past, we've talked about Lauri Markkanen. They were heavily linked to him at one point. Brandon Ingram was at least kicked around in the Warriors camp, it sounds like, but they weren't ever really willing to commit to that. Jimmy Butler becomes a very interesting proposition for them, where Butler is somebody that ultimately, you're matching up him and Draymond, where it's not like you're the elite three-point shooting team that you once were, but Butler, I do think, it would far and away be the best teammate that he's ever played with, would give him some more opportunities to sort of relax his body a little bit more, and I think give you a little bit more, especially on the defensive side of the ball as well, where in Miami, during that 2023 playoff run, he took his defense up to that next level when he needed to, but at the same time, he was doing everything offensively. I actually go back to 2022, when you're talking about Jimmy Butler in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics, that transition three that he ends up pulling up for, it was more out of desperation for him because he was just so gassed that he knew he didn't really have it in him for another overtime period. Yeah, it was an open shot, but it's not necessarily his shot, especially in that moment, considering, what the stakes were at there, that it would give him a lot more leeway to sort of, try and rejuvenate himself, because he turns 36 years old tomorrow on Saturday, September 14th. So he is going to be 36 years old. Like I mentioned, he has missed at least 15 games in each of the past 5 seasons that I would have some hesitations of paying him long term. And again, Pat Riley has sort of voiced his discontent for Jimmy Butler at times of not being available for them. And not just that, but also speaking out to the media a lot, speaking down on Eastern Conference rivals, that he seems like the Heat front office is maybe a little bit frustrated. I'm sure grateful to him. He's led them to 2 NBA finals since the start of 2020, but it's also a matter of, that's great. What have you done for me recently? That's just the way that sports run in general. And I'm sure there are people, I'm sure 100% Jimmy Butler believes that if he was available for that Celtics series, they would have won. I would definitely push back on that idea. But again, talking hypotheticals doesn't really do anything for us. And it sounds like, according to Shams Charania, that Jimmy Butler plans to play out this season on the final year of his deal, does have a player option that he could pick up in 2025 if he wanted to, but it sounds like that is not going to be the plan, and he is hoping to hit free agency one more time and cash out one last time. So ultimately, it sounds like there's very little commitment between Jimmy Butler and the Heat on wanting to work out a long-term deal. And to me, the way that this plays out is that the Heat are going to evaluate what they have in-house through the first few months of the season. They get Jimmy Butler back, they get Terry Rozier back, Tyler Hero, and, Tyler Hero, brutal playoffs for him. But that being said, I think the biggest concern with the Heat in these past couple years has been that they don't have enough offensive firepower, that they don't have enough guys that can go and get you a bucket. You bring in Terry Rozier, who can do that. Tyler Hero, again, sure, does he struggle defensively? Yeah, but the Heat, the defense isn't really the issue for the Heat. You have Bam Adebayo, who also, by the way, is coming off of this very impressive Olympic run that ultimately the Heat feel like they probably have a puncher's chance of, making some noise. I don't have a ton of faith in them, but it wouldn't make sense for them, in my opinion at least, to sort of pull the trigger on anything short of an outstanding deal now, because things break, somebody on the Celtics or the Knicks get hurt. The Heat probably aren't that far down the pecking order of the Eastern Conference to have a chance at another finals run. But I don't think that the Heat are going to be willing to, settle for more mediocre regular season showings from them. That they are, again, going to play this out at least for the first couple months and see whether or not this is something that they believe that they can build on. Because I do think that they have a defensive backbone, but they're also not quite as elite as they were when they were the 1 seed in 2000, at the top of the Eastern Conference in 2020 and 2021. And I think they were also the 1 seed actually in 2022 as well. That, they maybe don't have quite the same personnel in terms of defensive players there, but Heat culture, I know it's cliche, but I do just sort of buy into it in terms of, this idea that the Heat are going to play good defense, that Eric Spoelstra is going to maximize the talent of each of the players that are on their roster. Jaime Jaquez Jr. definitely emerging into one of the top young players for that Heat core. So I think that they have no plans to move off of Jimmy Butler, that they're going to try and have success this upcoming season. If we're getting towards the trade deadline and the Heat do not appear to be in it, that's where I could see them maybe getting crazy, because I don't think that Jimmy Butler plays more than one season left with the Heat. I think he plays out the rest of this year, and no matter what happens, I think he either walks in free agency and somebody else pays him, or that the Heat end up trading him this upcoming season, maybe a little bit less likely. But the Warriors are going to be involved there, and I think that having at least from a mental perspective, a couple assassins in Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler would be incredibly entertaining to watch. Do I think it would be the thing that pushes the Warriors over the edge for being finals contenders once again? I don't, but just it's a fun idea, that's for sure. But let me know what your thoughts are on that fit in the comment section but that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show, and we will be back on Monday afternoon at 2:00 p.m. Eastern. We will see you then. Take care. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go